Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the second part of the second Star Trek. Oh, actually, no. This is actually the first part of the second Star Trek marathon. Um, I basically split these off into two because I thought, what's the point of having 13 films into one marathon? Even though that's kind of. Well, anyway, so this is the second Star Trek marathon, and um, today. Well, it doesn't really matter because I'm gonna put them all in one playlist anyway. So. Welcome to the 8th part of the Star Trek Marathon. Or if you guys don't want to call it the first part of the second Star Trek Marathon, that's fine. Um, really quickly before we start, I forgot to mention that this is my only kind of TNG shirt, as you can tell by the little insignia badge. Um, and that's really unfortunate, but I really do want to pick up some more like TNG shirts at some point. Um, because I neglected to acknowledge this in the last video because I had so much to talk about. Um, and so, yeah, and I'm just going to say this right now. This is my favorite out of the TNG films. Um, it's not the. It's certainly one of the best Star Trek films, not the best, because I've already said that was Star Trek 2. But it's certainly my second favorite Star Trek film of all time and my favorite TNG film of all time. And I think everyone can agree that First Contact is the best TNG film. Um, and this was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who obviously played Commander Riker in the series, and who would play obviously Commander Riker in the four TNG films. Um, and I believe this is his first directing role, and for his first role, pretty solid. Um, it just sucks that after this film, it just goes just kind of downhill with Insurrection, which is considered to be one of the like worst Star Trek films ever made. Um, and that's really unfortunate. I don't know if he actually directed anything else after this. I gotta check his work after this, but I think, especially after watching First Contact like numbers of times, I could say that he's a very competent director. Um, so yeah, so let's get on to that plot. This was released on November 22nd of 1996. Um, with a budget of $45 million, it made 92 million domestically, and worldwide it made 150 million. So this was certainly a success. So yeah. Anyways, let's get on to that plot. So the Enterprise E and its crew follow a Borg ship through a time warp to prevent the Borg from taking over the Earth in a past era. Stuck in the past, Geordie LaForge, played by LeVar Burton, helps a pioneer of space travel, Zephyr Cochrane, played by James Cromwell, and in his efforts to create the first warp drive, while Captain Picard, played by Patrick Stewart, and Commander Riker, Commander Data, played by Brent Spiner, battled the Borg Queen, played by Alice Cridge. I'm really sorry if I butchered that name. As she tries to take over the Enterprise E. Um, so, like I said, I love this film. This is um, it's certainly in my top 5 favorites. Um, it's really just it's really everything in this film that's like, it's just especially the actors that play it off so well. Patrick Stewart, I think, plays his best performance as Jean-Luc Picard. Even though I did say in the Generations video that he did have, um, my favorite scene was, him. He could pull off very good emotions, which is really played in this movie. Which I will go on to when I talk about my favorite scenes of the film. So yeah, let's talk about the new cast members for the film. So, as I said in the plot synopsis, we have Alice Cridge as the Borg Queen. Now, a lot of people have an issue with the Borg Queen and I kind of understand why. Because it is established in TNG, like around like basically Q and the Best of Both Worlds, that the Borg is basically like a mind. It's a mind of a whole bunch of Borg, and to kind of have one Borg be in control of all the other Borg is kind of rectifies that. But even in the movie, the Borg Queen says that she controls the chaos. So like, just imagine trying to have like like a regular conversation with another person. Just imagine having that conversation, but times millions and trillions of Borg. It's really insane. So she kind of controls them. Like not in this, like they still work as a mind, but in terms of like if some of them, I think if they're like if some of them are getting out of line, she's kind of like the one that kind of tells them to kind of try and calm down. Not telling them to give orders or anything, because like I said, they're still all a collective mind. Uh, they later went on to basically crap on that idea in Star Trek Voyager. Um, but I don't really watch that show anyway, so it's either original series TNG or Deep Space Nine. Um, the only time that I ever actually consider watching Star Trek Voyager is for the two-parter Scorpion, which was the season 3 finale and the season 4 uh, beginning. That's like the only really good episode in that whole series. um, and then you have James Conway as Zephyr Cochrane. Um, I think he does a very good performance as not only needed the acting drunk, but also basically as a coward who doesn't want to like kind of do, because like once the Enterprise crew shows up and I guess Jordan basically accidentally tells him that he's gonna become this like big icon. Like he doesn't say the Federation, but he's gonna become this big person. He's like, I ain't doing this, and he runs off. And um, Riker stuns him with a phaser to kind of say, "Hey, you ain't leaving." Um, so and they both Geordi and Riker kind of bring him out of his shell to kind of do this warp flight test that if he doesn't do would change the whole course of humanity. Um, but they kind of bring him out of his shell of being a shy, well, not shy, but kind of just a wimpy person to this pioneer of space travel, and I really think that's a good kind of like so like plot A, as I said, like a the the A plot of the film is Picard and Data trying to stop the Borg Queen from one taking over the Enterprise E, and two trying to stop Zeph from Cochrane. And the B plot is like Riker and like Geordi trying to, like I said, trying to get Zeph from Cochrane to go on the spaceship or the space travel so that humanity can go along as it was and not be altered. Um, we have Alfred Woodard. I'm really sorry if I butchered that, as Lily Sloan, who is basically the love interest for Picard in this film, and I think her chemistry with Picard is probably one of the best things about this film. Because at first she's like, who are you guys? Like, because she even says like when the attacks first happen is like um, it kind of indicates to you that this happened before, and they need to save the ship. And when Picard and Data show up to try and fix it, she kind of just like without hesitation just starts shooting at them, which is granted because like she just sees these people and all of a sudden they're trying to kind of like um like this, they're like talking about your ship. They must have, they must be like from your enemy kind of people. So why not you just start shooting at them to kind of keep the evidence away? But yeah, the chemistry between her, Lily and Picard is probably one of the best things about this film. And um, the scene where they're on the holodeck trying to get one of the Borg's neural processors is a very, very good scene. I might as well say it. That's my first favorite scene is when they're on like trying to they leave and they're like walking around the ship and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. But Card thinks of a plan, so he shoots one with his phaser. They go into the holodeck and they put on a holodeck from The Big Goodbye, which well, it's a part of the Big Goodbye holodeck kind of novel. And if you guys may remember The Big Goodbye, it's from probably one of the best episodes. In fact, probably the best episode from the lackluster first season, and that is, funnily enough, called the Big Goodbye. Um, and so they get on there, and um, the whole thing is that so they turn off the safety precautions, uh, precautions. Sorry. Um, so that when he gets a Tommy gun, he just shoots the Borg and it kills them. And like in that scene, he shows pure anger by so he shoots this one Borg very quickly, and then the other Borg comes up. He just you think like a couple shots would like do it like just like a couple of but like no, he holds on it and he screams like in anger, like he hates the Borg and he wants to kill them, and it's very emotional. It's like, well, it's not very emotional. It's very like you can relate to him because like, if you're a TNG fan, which is probably the only why you would watch these films, um, for the best episodes in like not only TNG but in the whole franchise, the best of both worlds, part 1 and 2. Obviously, he's assimilated by the Borg, and um he has to not only with like without knowing like he still gets to remember these memories, but like he has to like basically try and like destroy the Federation, the thing that he's always fought for, and now he has to fight against them. And obviously when the crew, the Enterprise D, save him, and in the next episode after that in season 4, which is Family, he breaks down and saying like he just breaks down because he knew that this feeling is horrible to him, and it's really like um it kind of the whole holodeck scene in this film kind of relates to my second favorite scene where, well, I guess I should probably talk about the rest of the cast before I get too sidetracked. It Neil McDone as Sean Hawk, the ensign, who is unfortunately kind of killed off uh, when Picard, Worf, and Hawk go onto the deflector dish because they're trying to. The Borg are trying to use the deflector dish to kind of like send a message to the future, so that more Borg can come back and just like assimilate Earth. But obviously, they stop them from doing that. But Hawk is unfortunately kind of killed off, and he tries to stop Picard, but when he tries to uh, d- um, do his like kind of panel that he was trying to do before he got assimilated, and then Worf kind of shoots him. Um, we also have Dwight Schwartz as Reginald Barkley, and we have even though I didn't really see him in the film, I did kind of hear his voice, so I'm like, oh, isn't that Barkley? And then we have a surprise little cameo by Robert Picardo as the holographic doctor, who by this point, because this was 96, so that means Voyager was on their second season. Like either the end of their first season or the beginning of their second season by this point. Um, because the show aired in 95, and obviously this film came out in 96, so yeah, probably like midway through the second season of Voyager. Um, but yeah, Robert Picardo has this little cameo when Crusher turns on the holographic doctor to kind of stall the Borg because they're trying to break into sickbay. So they open up a Jeffries tube and she activates the holographic doctor to try and distract them. And his uncanny trying to see like trying to see what the Borg are trying to do. Like, can I help you? And all of a sudden just break through the door, and it's really funny. It's probably one of my other favorite scenes of the film. Um, but yeah, my second favorite scene, I guess I already said it was like the holographic doctor. Um, well, if we're going backwards, might as well just say that another favorite scene of mine is the opening fight with the Borg cube at the battle of Sector 001. With the Defiant and like hundreds of other ships trying to fight the Borg. And I've heard people complain that even though the Defiant was meant to fight the Borg, they're doing pretty crap. Um, but you gotta remember, like this was like it takes a little like the Enterprise E was in the neutral zone, like was like on the border of the neutral zone, and the Defiant and like all the other ships are basically at Earth. So that's gonna take, even though the Enterprise E is probably one of the fastest ships in the fleet, it's still gonna take them like a little bit to kind of get there. So, and like the battle, I think it's like by the time we see the Defiant, it's been going on for like 3 hours. Um, so for the Defiant to be fighting for 3 hours and only having like a single like like a single little like dent, well not dent, but like a little hole in one of the nacelles is actually pretty good. But obviously when we cut to the bridge, it's pretty much everyone's dead except for Worf and the ensign. Um and obviously the Enterprise E comes in and saves the day, and that's kind of like the first part when we kind of hear the psychic connection uh with from Picard to the Borg, cause um like when he sees like all the ships like getting destroyed, all of a sudden he starts hearing voices, and then all of a sudden like that he just has the idea of like, okay, go to this he's like he opened the channel to the fleet and he's like, okay, I'm Captain Picard of the Enterprise E. I'm taking command of the fleet. Set your coordinates to this point of the cube. Fire on my mark. And Dad's like, that's like an unmarked sector of the cube, and he's Picard's just like, trust me, Data, and they all fire, and it obviously destroys the cube. Because of the psychic link that he kind of has. With the Borg, because obviously he still has like those kind of implants in his head. Um, but yeah, that's probably like my second favorite scene. And that's like the the best 10 minutes of a Star Trek film. That's very very close to the first 10 minutes of Generations as being the best of any Star Trek film. But my third favorite scene, or actually no, my fourth favorite scene is uh after when Picard confronts Worf about being a coward because of like this whole like, why send them down there if you know that they're like, because Picard literally says fight them hand to hand if you need to. That shows them that the crew are getting weak, like they're having no other options. And so Worf's just basically like, bruh, you know you're just sending them to their death, right? And he goes, just get back to your post, and Worf delivers that. Like they keep on going back and forth, uh, to which Picard eventually says like, "You coward," and Worf delivers that excellent line where he goes, "If you were any other man, I will kill you where you stand." Um, and then uh, after that, Lily confronts Picard in the conference lounge, and they have this again. They have this back and forth to where one of the probably the best acting by Jean-Luc Picard is when Lily says, "Just blow up the damn ship," and in fantastic Patrick Stewart, he just goes, "No," and he just takes his phaser rifle and he goes, "No," and he smacks it on the sheet of glass with all the Enterprise models like all over it, like all the gold ones, and he shatters it. And then he goes into this kind of like like this Patrick Stewart monologue where like he's like they do this and they do that and we fall back. We try to they they send us to do this and we fall back. And he ends the speech with the fantastic line of, "And I will make them pay for what they've done." And then all of a sudden they just start talking about Captain Ahab because that's a quote from Captain Ahab, and it's like, okay, you just granted that's kind of funny, but like you kind of just killed that moment because you just went from having this fantastic speech, and then all of a sudden it's like, is that from Captain Ahab? And it's like, yep. Um, it's kind of just out of nowhere, just like, yeah, that was from Captain Ahab. um, and Data has a very kind of probably his most important role in like any of like the Star Trek films because he's basically like the second main character in the whole film because um he like early on in the film like he gets kind of they try to get into engineering and they get outnumbered, but unfortunately Data gets kind of stupidly he gets like the door. I thought like the door was open like this, not like up, but apparently that one does. So it opens up, and someone like a board, like it's obviously a board camp, but someone grabs his legs and yanks him, and like he's trying to hold on, and he gets sucked into engineering, and when he wakes up, he's kind of tied, like not tied, but like he's onto this bed, like basically getting held for his life, and all of a sudden, you hear the Borg Queen's voice, and so she's like, "I can give you what you want," and um over like the film you could see like he like on his arm he's getting like human skin on, like they removed his robotic skin and put on like not actual human flesh because but like put on this like kind of like human flesh so that he can feel like she blows on it and like it feels like you're getting pushed in the wind, and then he tries to make an escape and a board kind of cuts him and he goes like ow, and he's like because he's bleeding, um and then I don't know if any other parts of his body besides like half of his face were also turned to like human flesh, but it's from what we can tell it's his arm and like it's like this really cool shot where it's like half of his face. So like half of his face is like still like the robotic Data, and like half of it is human, and it's like kind of it's like something you would see out of like the Reanimator or something like that. It's very freaky, and um, Picard enters there to kind of have a showdown with the Borg Queen, and um, Data kind of unlocks the encryption code that he put in earlier in the film because he's been seduced in quotations by the Borg Queen. I guess might as well just say it's spoilers because I guess I already said spoilers, but I guess I'm already gonna say that. But spoilers. This is kind of the spoiler section of the film or of the review. Um, but so he's seduced by in quotations by the Borg Queen. So he unlocks the encryption code. So basically now they can fire torpedoes and like fire weapons, and they plan on destroying the the Phoenix, which is the ship that Cochrane made to have warp drive, and um, so Data, they have Picard like kind of tied up like in like the same bed that Data was on earlier, kind of like he's like they're helpless, like the plan is gone, is like failed. So he fires the torpedoes, and it's like suspense where it's like, oh my god, is it gonna hit? Is it gonna hit the Phoenix, or is it gonna miss? And it's quantum torpedoes, because I think this is the first film to introduce the quantum torpedoes. Actually, was it? I think it might have been actually. Well, this might have been I know this is the first film where they introduced quantum torpedoes, but in terms of Star Trek, I think that actually the first. Well, it might have been Deep Space Nine. It's either this or Deep Space Nine that introduced the quantum torpedoes. It was around this time anyway. So they fired the quantum torpedoes, and it's like sometimes like, oh my god, is it gonna hit? Is it gonna hit the Phoenix, or is it gonna miss? And you see the torpedoes go, and they miss like just by a smidge. They miss the Phoenix, and to later Data says that badass line where he just goes, where like the Borg Queen just turns to Data and just goes, Data, and he just goes, resistance is futile, or like futile. And he turns around because the plan was to rupture one of the coolant tanks, because the Borg are like half robotic, half flesh. So once they rupture one of the cooling tanks, it basically gets rid of all organic life. So basically, once the so Data just turns around and punctures the coolant tank, he goes flying because obviously the pressure is just poof, and um and then they have Picard and the Borg Queen, and then eventually Data kind of all have this showdown, where eventually the Borg Queen is kind of dragged into the coolant, and her kind of skin just in this really cool kind of CGI effect. I believe it's CGI, where her skin kind of just like kind of flake. It just cornflakes away. It just like disintegrates, and then you see because obviously she's like the kind of the leader. Um, all the other Borgs are like getting like killed. Like they're getting shocked and they fall over, and then she dies, and then um, Picard gets all the coolant out so that he can obviously walk around. And I think honestly this is like the best kind of redemption that he could have had for the Borg Queen, because it's shown in flashbacks that when he was first assimilated by the Borg, the Borg Queen was there, and she's like, so he kind of just picks up the robotic skull, picks up kind of like the spinal cord, and just snaps it, like this like metal robotic spinal cord just, and it just dies, and I'm just like, yes, kill her. And unfortunately, they screwed that up, like I said, in Voyager, because she just comes back like out of nowhere, and it's so stupid. But like, just forgetting about Voyager, that scene where he just picks up the skull and just basically just disconnects the spinal cord, and it dies. I think that's like, yes, the Borg the Borg kind of subplot with Picard is finished, and they did it right, and I love it. Um, and they kind of just they go back in time. They see the rival of the aliens, because that's what the whole plan was about, and they're Vulcan, and that obviously kind of sparks the whole Star Trek universe. And Picard shares one final kiss with Lily. They beam up to the Enterprise, and they warp off back into well, you don't see it, but like they go back into but you can kind of see like the little tiny miniature, and they go back in time, and that's where the film ends. Um, this is a joyride. This is a if like this is basically saying it. What if Star Trek combined with like if Star Trek was kind of like a suspense horror film, and I love it. It's like the perfect, like, if Star Trek was horror but not really, and it was like a suspense film, it's fantastic. Um, but yeah, I really enjoy this film, like I already said. Um, really quickly, I want to talk about the fun fact, the composer, and my rating. Even though I've talked about very highly this film, so this could have been a lot worse, honestly. Um, so did you know that the original script idea was for the crew of the Enterprise? The crew of the Enterprise were trying to stop the Borg at the beginning of the Renaissance era, and the title was originally Star Trek Renaissance. So yeah, the original idea for Star Trek First Contact, even though it wasn't called that until this, until the final script idea, was for the Enterprise crew to try and stop the Borg, who went back to the Renaissance era. And there was gonna be like sword fights. There was gonna be like a castle that was gonna be assimilated by the Borg, and Data was gonna be an apprentice to Leonardo da Vinci. It would have been a very good. It would have been a very good idea for a Doctor Who episode, but not Star Trek. Like reading this, and I'm on. It just makes me even more glad that we have the idea that we had now. But yeah, the visual effects were done by ILM, and I forgot to talk about this in the last video, but ILM, for generations, they were fantastic. And same goes for this one, which I believe is the last Star Trek production, the last Star Trek film to use physical models. Because with Insurrection and even kind of Nemesis, you could tell that they, well, especially Insurrection, you could tell that they use CGI. Nemesis, not so much, but I'll talk about that when I get to Insurrection and Nemesis. But for the later films, they use CGI. This was the last film to use practical models, and they went out with a bang. The introduction of the Enterprise E is probably the best, shot of the whole film. It's just one nice panning shot, and it looks great. Um, but yeah, so obviously, so the composer for this film is I almost said Dennis McCarthy. Is the fantastic Jerry Goldsmith, who returned from a few years after Star Trek 5, because that was in '89. This was '96, so this was 7 years after that, and he pulls up another cracking score, and I really enjoy it. I don't think this score has been re-released yet, which is really kind of unfortunate. Um, but if you try and look it up, you can probably find it very easily. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna give this film a 9 out of 10. This is the almost perfect Star Trek film. Obviously, we have Star Trek 2 for the absolute perfect Star Trek film, but I honestly think this is an almost perfect Star Trek film. So anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for tomorrow, where I'm going to be doing Star Trek Insurrection, which is considered to be one of the worst Star Trek films of all time. And you guys will see my opinions on that when that video comes out. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys tomorrow for the Star Trek Insurrection video, or review. Live long and prosper, out.